On January 15, 1967, with 6 minutes and change remaining on the first quarter clock, backup Green Bay Packers wide receiver Max McGee, 34 years old and hungover, having needed to borrow a helmet to get into the game, reached behind himself to make a one-handed catch on a pass from quarterback Bart Starr. From that point on the field, approximately the opponent's 27-yard line, McGee would race into the end zone along the blades of Californian grass, providing the game's first touchdown in a contest that would retroactively be known as Super Bowl I. On February 8, 2026, 21,574 days later, with his team trailing 29-7, New England Patriots running back Rhamondre Stevenson, having leaked out of the backfield, provided an outlet to his under-pressure all-day quarterback Drake May. With the pass ready to hit the California grass, Stevenson scooped it up at the 3-yard line, turned around, and completed the short jaunt into the end zone for a 7-yard touchdown. With 2 minutes and 21 seconds remaining in the game, it was its final touchdown in, to date, the final NFL game to have been played, Super Bowl 60. In Between has seen its fair share of twists and turns, all converging into one fascinating story. Today we're going to be going on a journey examining that story as we take a look at the history of Super Bowl touchdowns. Quickly before doing that, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for joining us today and for clicking on this video. If you would please, do the whole YouTube thing. Like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, and ding that notification bell. Let's get started. Let's start this thing off by saying that there's no way we're going to be able to cover everything that's ever happened in the Super Bowl here in this video. It's going to be a long one, but it don't need to be 15 hours long. We're looking to just hit the basics and maybe go a little bit deeper in a few areas. And speaking of the basics, that makes for a good place to start. Across 60 Super Bowls, 329 total touchdowns have been scored. That doesn't make for the cleanest average. We're looking at 5.483 per game. But we do have a bit of statistical magic here, for those touchdowns were scored by 240 different players for an exact average of 4 players per game. Just think about that 240 number for a minute. Pro Football Reference suggests that 15,421 people have played in the NFL since 1966, which of course is the first season that the Super Bowl was played. It is estimated that since 1960, approximately 800,000 people have played some form of college football. Further estimates suggest that between 6.5 and 7.8% of high school football players make it to college. So working backwards at 7.8%, in this time frame, over 10 million people have played high school football. At 6.5%, we are well over 12 million. It's also estimated that 70% of kids quit all organized sports by the age of 13, meaning of course that only 30% even get to the high school level. We can roughly estimate then that between 33 and 40 million people have played football, and that's just in the United States, all of whom could have theoretically played in a Super Bowl. And from that group, 240 have scored a touchdown in that Super Bowl, between 0.006 and 0.00073%, a number that leaves out a significant amount of Hall of Famers and other outstanding talents. To make it even more exclusive, only 59 people have scored multiple Super Bowl touchdowns. Unreal. Back to the numbers. Those 329 touchdowns have gone for 6,684 yards, an average of more than 20 yards per touchdown. That's right, the average Super Bowl touchdown has come from outside the red zone. Those 240 touchdown scorers have registered 9,172 regular season touchdowns between them. Although it would be more accurate to say those 9,172 touchdowns came from just 231 players. For you see, 9 of these guys, their Super Bowl touchdown was the only touchdown they ever scored in their careers. We'll get back to those guys in due time. That is still a career average of more than 38 touchdowns scored per player. Not surprisingly, over half of all Super Bowl touchdowns, 185, have come through the air. Rushing touchdowns account for 107, 17 have been interception returns or pick sixes, 10 have been on kickoff returns, 7 have been from fumble recoveries, 6 on defense, and 1 on special teams, we'll get to that one, with 3 off a blocked punt. What we've still yet to see in a Super Bowl is a blocked kick touchdown despite the 3 from blocked punts, or somehow a punt return touchdown despite the 10 kick returns. Those 185 touchdown passes come from 66 players, but when accounting for just quarterbacks, we have exactly 60, good for an average of 1 unique quarterback per game. Thanks and a shout out go to Sam Darnold and Drake May for both getting on the board in this last go around. These 66 individuals certainly did their damage during the regular season as well, combining for an astonishing 13,232 career touchdown passes, more than 220 per player. For 4 of these guys, or maybe just 3 of them, this was their only ever career touchdown pass. We will get to them as well. Standing above all the touchdown scorers, of course, is the man who stands atop the entire NFL mountain in that department. The one, the only, the true GOAT, Jerry Rice. 208 times in his regular season career, Jerry Rice possessed the football in the opposing team's end zone. In other playoff games, not counting the Super Bowl, he tacked on 14 more. Then, in 4 Super Bowl games, he scored 8 total touchdowns, good for 1 per half. For the record, that's 230 career touchdowns. If someone scored 20 touchdowns every season for 11 straight seasons, he would still be short of that number. Rice also leads the way with 214 total yards from those touchdowns, averaging nearly 27 yards per. He is one of only 7 players to catch a touchdown from multiple passers, but he is the only one to catch them from 3, those being Joe Montana, Steve Young, and Rich Gannon. 39 different players have scored multiple touchdowns in the same Super Bowl. From that group, only 6 have scored 3 touchdowns in the same Super Bowl. From that group, only Jerry Rice has done it twice. His 8 touchdown receptions are followed by Rob Gronkowski with 5 and a host of other players with 3. That means no 2 players combined can surpass his individual total. He is one of only 3 players to score touchdowns in 4 separate Super Bowls. No matter how you slice this pie, no one did it like Jerry Rice did it. And with all these accolades we just listed, we have so many branching paths we can take. Who are the other 2 players who have scored touchdowns in 4 separate Super Bowls? Obviously, one would have to have played in at least that many in order to get there. What if I told you that one player somehow not only scored in 4 Super Bowls, but he did so in 4 straight Super Bowls? Although we've had many players play in consecutive Super Bowls for different teams, there is only one that offered its own players that opportunity. So naturally, this has got to be a member of the Buffalo Bills. And it is, and it's the obvious choice. With scores of 31, 1, 2, and 4 yards, Thurman Thomas scored exactly 1 touchdown in each of the 4 Super Bowls that his Buffalo Bills lost. Yikes. But who is the other one? I'll bet a lot of Steeler players come to mind. Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Franco Harris. They all make sense, but none of them are correct. Perhaps it's Rob Gronkowski. After all, Gronk is part of this extremely exclusive list of guys who all have a case as the GOAT at their respective positions. He, along with Jerry Rice and Emmitt Smith, are the only players to ever have multiple touchdowns scored in more than 1 Super Bowl. Alas, Gronk tapped out at 3 different games. Same goes for Emmitt, who only played in 3. Another Patriot, maybe? A Cowboy from the 90s dynasty who snuck in another one for another team? No, and no. Do you know who it is? The 3rd person to score in 4 separate Super Bowls? The answer may surprise you. It certainly surprised me. We've got Jerry Rice, Thurman Thomas, and John Elway. That's right, quarterback. John Elway, who in his early days at least always had better than average mobility, finding his way into the end zone in every Super Bowl he played in, except for Super Bowl 22 against the Redskins. 4 yards in 21, 3 yards in 24, both losses, 1 yard in 32, and 3 yards in 33, both wins. And of course, none of those runs added up and multiplied by a gajillion are as memorable as his helicopter run, which merely went for a first down. Yet Elway is only tied for the most Super Bowl touchdowns scored by a quarterback. As of 2 seasons ago, he had to make room for Philadelphia Eagles QB Jalen Hurts. Hurts became the 5th member of that very exclusive club of players with 3 touchdown games in the Super Bowl, the only quarterback on the list, and the only player to do so in a losing cause. Prior to him, the only other quarterback with multiple touchdowns scored in a Super Bowl was Jim McMahon. Hurts did the threefer in Super Bowl 57, and he added one more to the ledger in Super Bowl 59. Hurts will be 28 years old to start the 2026 season, so he will have plenty of opportunity to own the QB record on his own, and if he can ever get back into the big game, one must imagine he will close it out. That now leaves us with 4 other players who have scored 3 touchdowns in a Super Bowl, and these guys are all running backs. When Jerry Rice accomplished the feat in Super Bowl 24, not only was he not the first player to do so, he wasn't even the first 49er to do so. That honor belongs to Roger Craig. In Super Bowl 19, he caught 2 touchdown passes and scored another on the ground. Then when Rice did it again in Super Bowl 29, he wasn't even the first 49er to do so in that game. Ricky Watters, in his final game as a 49er, followed the exact Roger Craig formula, 2 through the air and 1 on the ground. Super Bowl 32 gave us our first non-49er with Terrell Davis. He became the first and to this date the only player ever with 3 rushing touchdowns in a single Super Bowl. Then we have James White, the scorer of the first ever Super Bowl touchdown in overtime. He did the reverse Craig and Watters, scoring 1 through the air and 2 on the ground. As a side note, he is the only player here who also scored on a 2-point conversion, giving him the Super Bowl record for most points scored in a game with 20. Interestingly, only Terrell Davis from this group was named Super Bowl MVP. Here now is the list of all players who have scored multiple touchdowns in a single Super Bowl game. Of course, this will cover the guys that we've already looked at who have scored 3. Ricky Watters isn't the only teammate Jerry Rice has accomplished this feat with, as Tom Rathman pulled a trick with him in Super Bowl 24. No one else in the 3-touchdown club has shared such glory. Tom Rathman's not the only other fullback on this list, as Larry Zonka, Pete Banaszak, and Howard Griffith have pulled off the trick as well. As previously mentioned, Rob Gronkowski and Emmitt Smith joined Jerry Rice in pulling off the feat twice. And of course, joining Jalen Hurts as the only other quarterback to do this is Jim McMahon. McMahon's touchdowns came in back-to-back manner, as did Damian Williams, who capped off Super Bowl 54 that way. When coupled with Rob Gronkowski's consecutive touchdowns to begin Super Bowl 55, that technically gives us our only consecutive touchdowns. Another person who scored consecutive touchdowns in a Super Bowl is Michael Irvin, who did so in the quickest amount of time for the same player at just 18 seconds. 9 players have scored multiple touchdowns in a Super Bowl in a losing effort. Jalen Hurts and Rob Gronkowski when he was on the Patriots are 2. We're going to highlight 3 of them here for the moment: Bill Miller in Super Bowl 2, Antonio Freeman in Super Bowl 32, and Xavier Worthy in Super Bowl 59, Worthy being the most recent player to score twice in a single Super Bowl. Cooper Kupp for the LA Rams in Super Bowl 56 is the last player to do so in a winning cause. Gerald Riggs and Keenan McCardell might not immediately spring to mind, but they're on the list as well. Riggs did this for the Redskins in Super Bowl 26, then his teammate on that team, McCardell, did so 11 years later for the Buccaneers. Those two weren't teammates at the time where they scored their 2 touchdowns, but we've got 2 such sets remaining. Elijah Pitts and Max McGee from the Packers in Super Bowl I, and Ricky Sanders and Timmy Smith with the Redskins in Super Bowl 22. Another set of teammates here did this in back-to-back Super Bowls, John Stallworth and Franco Harris in Super Bowls 13 and 14 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The only Super Bowl MVP remaining here is Marcus Allen, and many will remember his amazing 74-yard scamper, but there is also the 5-yarder he had earlier in the game. And his Raider teammate in that game, wide receiver Cliff Branch, did the double trick earlier in Super Bowl 15. While guys like Roger Craig, Ricky Watters, and Damian Williams all scored their touchdowns in different manners, one receiving and one rushing, Jacoby Jones is the only one here to do so with a reception and a kick return. And considering it happened fairly recently, maybe Greg Jennings of the Green Bay Packers in Super Bowl 45 has one of the more forgotten 2 touchdown performances in Super Bowl history. Then of course is Dwight Smith in Super Bowl 37 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the only player to ever score twice in a single Super Bowl without playing any offense. And that's just gonna leave us these 4. They're not the only ones to do this in a losing effort, but they are the only ones to do so in a back-to-back manner in a losing effort. Dan Ross scored the final 2 touchdowns of Super Bowl 16, too little too late for the Bengals against the 49ers. Eddie George plowed in for 2 short scores in Super Bowl 34, including one of my favorite touchdowns of all time when he just pushed his way through Rams defensive lineman Jeff Skanina, who incidentally has one of the coolest names in NFL history. Larry Fitzgerald topped off maybe the single greatest postseason in NFL history with a short 1-yarder for the Arizona Cardinals, then breaking out with a 64-yarder that actually gave that 9-7 team a 4th quarter lead. Then we have T. Higgins. First of all, Higgins became the first player to be the second player to pull off this specific feat for the same franchise, and of course, it's the Bengals. The distance between his 2 consecutive touchdowns of 6 and 75 yards ties Marcus Allen for the largest such disparity between those consecutive scores. He's also the most recent player to do this, and he is the only one to catch those 2 touchdowns from 2 different passers. Moreover, he is the only player, period, to ever catch 2 touchdowns in a single Super Bowl from 2 different passers. Nicely done, T. Higgins. As we mentioned earlier, the majority of all Super Bowl touchdowns have come through the air, specifically by touchdown passes. It should come as little surprise that Tom Brady, he of 10 Super Bowl starts, has thrown more than anyone else at 21. Let's dig into that a little though. His 21 touchdown passes, 10 more than anyone else and more than double that of anyone else outside of Joe Montana, have come for a combined total of 159 yards. That's only 8th all-time, less than halfway to the leader in this category, Terry Bradshaw, in his 323 total yards with 12 fewer touchdowns. Bradshaw is more than 100 yards ahead of everyone else. Can you believe that John Elway only has 3 touchdown passes in 5 Super Bowls? He has more rushing than he does passing. But his shortest was 47 yards. Brady's longest, one of only 2 from outside the red zone, was 26 yards. Out of the 66 people to throw a Super Bowl touchdown pass, Brady's 7.57 yards per touchdown ranks 51st. The only other player with at least 3 career touchdowns with a lower average per touchdown is Eli Manning, who of course did so exclusively while Tom Brady watched on from the sideline. Make of all that what you will. Only 12 different quarterbacks have at least 4 Super Bowl touchdown passes to their names. 2 of them, Doug Williams with exactly 4 and Steve Young with 6, did so with only 1 start. The only other QB besides Tom Brady and Joe Montana in double digits is Patrick Mahomes, who has ample opportunity to add to that total in the future. But as it stands, with Mahomes at 10 and Montana at 11, the two of them combined to match Brady's 21. They didn't go for so many yards as mentioned earlier, but that is of course still very noteworthy. The only QB on this portion of the list with touchdown passes for two different franchises is Kurt Warner, competing twice in the Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams and once with the Arizona Cardinals. Ben Roethlisberger's first career Super Bowl touchdown pass was the Tampa teardrop double toe tap in the corner of the end zone near the end of Super Bowl 43 to Santonio Holmes, proving to be the game winner. This was near the end of his second career Super Bowl start, and while it's easy to look back on in hindsight, it's genuinely a bit surprising that he hadn't had a touchdown pass before that. Roethlisberger is also one of 14 different quarterbacks with at least 290 career touchdown passes to have also thrown a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. The only individual from that list, other than Tom Brady, with at least 5 career Super Bowl touchdown passes is Brett Favre, who sits at exactly 5. Let's get into some fun facts about the players who have scored some of these touchdowns. 9 players who have scored 100 touchdowns or more in their regular season career have also scored in the Super Bowl. Christian McCaffrey is very likely to very soon make this a 10-person list, sitting at 98 career touchdowns. Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins might make that list as well, sitting at 85, but that does, at the moment, seem unlikely. Others currently on the list certainly can get there one day, or perhaps someone who has yet to get on the board in a Super Bowl can do so in the future. Zach Ertz does have a Super Bowl touchdown, while somehow, despite playing in 2 games, Marshall Faulk does not. Saquon Barkley touched the ball a ton in his one Super Bowl appearance, but got no touchdown, while Alvin Kamara has yet to even play in a Super Bowl. The connection between these 4? They are tied with the most 2-point conversions in NFL history at 7 each. Here we have 2 different Pittsburgh Steelers tight ends who have scored Super Bowl touchdowns, Larry Brown and Randy Grossman. Each of them have scored 5 other career regular season touchdowns, each of them scoring exactly 1 in 5 different seasons. Perhaps the most misspelled touchdown combination in Super Bowl history took place in Super Bowl 54, when San Francisco 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo found fullback Kyle Juszczyk for a 15-yarder. Go ahead and try to spell Garoppolo and Juszczyk. Ron Smith, not Rod Smith of the Denver Broncos, scored only 4 other career touchdowns after the one he scored in Super Bowl 14 for the Los Angeles Rams. That touchdown represents exactly half the touchdowns he ever scored in his career for the Rams, having only scored 1 other. Cornerback Tracy Porter has 3 career touchdowns in the regular season, all for different teams. The Saints, for whom he scored his Super Bowl touchdown, the dagger in Super Bowl 44, the Broncos, and the Raiders. William Perry, also known as the Refrigerator, scored 3 regular season touchdowns for the Bears in the same season where he scored in Super Bowl 20. He played 127 games for the rest of his career without ever getting back into the end zone. There are 2 players whose career regular season touchdown totals absolutely shocked me. Phil McConkey caught a touchdown pass for the New York Giants in Super Bowl 21. He caught 1 touchdown for the Giants in 1984, 1 in 1985, joined the Green Bay Packers in 1986, and then rejoined the Giants that same season and caught 1 more touchdown before that Super Bowl grab. I didn't suspect he had 50 career scores or anything, but I certainly thought it was more than just 3. Then there's Alvin Garrett, who caught a touchdown pass for the Washington Redskins in Super Bowl 17. If you told me that Garrett had 32 career regular season touchdown catches, I absolutely would have believed you. But no, he had 32 career receptions, period, in his regular season career for 2 total touchdowns. Yet in that playoff run alone in 1982, across 4 games, Garrett had 15 catches for 5 touchdowns. What the hell, man? His connection to Howard Cosell also offers credence to the idea that his career was much more substantive. There are 9 players whose Super Bowl touchdown serves as the only touchdown they ever scored in their NFL careers, and not surprisingly, most of them played on defense. Jack Squirek, a linebacker for the Oakland Raiders, scored the shortest pick 6 in Super Bowl history, a 5-yarder off Redskins quarterback Joe Theismann as time was ticking away in the first half of Super Bowl 18. Reggie Phillips was a cog in the machine of the Super Bowl era's greatest defense of all time, grabbing a pick 6 for the 1985 Chicago Bears in Super Bowl 20. Defensive tackle Jimmy Jones was in the right place at the right time to score a 2-yard fumble recovery for the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl 27. Then the following season, James Washington, again for the Dallas Cowboys, completely turned Super Bowl 28 around with a 48-yard fumble return for a touchdown. The Super Bowl's longest fumble return for a touchdown on defense, but only the second longest ever though. We'll get to that one later. Eric Johnson of the Oakland Raiders scored in the Super Bowl's only touchdown off a blocked punt that wasn't recovered in the end zone, taking his end from 13 yards out. Those other 2 were among the only 3 touchdowns in Super Bowl history that were scored from 0 yards out. That other one was a fumble recovery in the end zone by Denver Broncos defensive lineman Malik Jackson in Super Bowl 50, his only career touchdown. The only other 2 have only just done the deed: Cooper DeJean for the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 59, and Uchenna Nwosu for the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 60. Both players remain active and have the chance to score a regular season touchdown one day. Nwosu is also the only player in Super Bowl history to score a touchdown whose first name begins with a U. He is also the only player to ever score a touchdown in Super Bowl history whose last name ends with a U. All of the aforementioned are candidates for the least likely touchdown scorer in Super Bowl history, but who else could make that list? Dwight Smith's 2 touchdowns have to go down as shocking since he only had one other in his entire career. James Harrison's pick 6 in Super Bowl 43 is the greatest play in NFL history. It's also Harrison's only career pick 6. He does have a fumble return touchdown though. Nick Bolton, still active in the league, scored half of his career touchdowns with his 1 fumble return touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 57. Ken Norton Jr. does have 2 career touchdowns on top of the fumble recovery he had for the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl 27, but those were both pick 6s, and they were both in the same game. But these guys played defense. By definition, they're unexpected touchdown scorers. How about offensive players? As mentioned earlier, Timmy Smith had 2 touchdowns in Super Bowl 22, but he only had 3 career touchdowns otherwise. That makes him the only offensive player in NFL history with that particular combination. Alvin Garrett and Phil McConkey's reputation suggested more career touchdowns than they actually had. Carl Monroe, a recipient of a 33-yard touchdown pass from Joe Montana in Super Bowl 19, the first touchdown of that game for the 49ers, also only scored 3 in his entire career. The first Buffalo Bills touchdown in Super Bowl history was not scored by Thurman Thomas. It was scored by Don Smith. Gary Russell scored the first touchdown in Super Bowl 43 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then there's Kurt Warner, quarterback of the St. Louis Rams, getting them into the end zone for the first time in Super Bowl 36. Each of these guys had 3 career touchdowns. Then there are a couple who only had 1 other score. Chris Matthews came out of nowhere to score for the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 49. Then there's Sky Moore, a second-round pick for the high-powered Kansas City Chiefs, who scored his first career touchdown in Super Bowl 57, the same game where Nick Bolton scored his touchdown. And Sky Moore has only secured 1 more since. He's still in the league, but if he never scores again, it won't be all that surprising. And although he scored 6 career touchdowns, quarterback Nick Foles never caught one. He did do that in Super Bowl 52 for the Philadelphia Eagles. You might be familiar with that play. It's called the Philly Special, and it has its own statue. So, from this group of players, who is the least likely touchdown scorer in Super Bowl history? None of them. For you see, there remains one last player whose only career touchdown took place in the Super Bowl. He is the only offensive player with this distinction, but he takes it even further than that. This particular individual not only never caught another touchdown pass in his NFL career, he never caught another pass. Period. Many will know the story of Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Percy Howard. In an era where teams rarely ran 3 receiver sets and rarely rotated their players, the rookie Howard rarely played in 1975 behind future Hall of Famer Drew Pearson and Dallas Cowboys legend Golden Richards. He did get to touch the ball twice though, a couple of kick returns, one for 20 yards, the other for 31 yards. Then Richards got injured in Super Bowl X, and Howard was thrust into the lineup. With Mel Blount covering him, possibly the greatest cornerback of all time, Howard caught a 34-yard touchdown pass with under 2 minutes remaining to cut the Steelers' lead down to 21-17. Dallas then got the ball back again, and with one last gasp, quarterback Roger Staubach again targeted Howard in the end zone. This time with J.T. Howard and Glenn Edwards in coverage, Howard was not able to make the play, which would have given him a miraculous second touchdown pass in the Super Bowl on just his second career catch period. Howard himself has suggested that if he jumped just a split second later, that he would have made the catch. He returned to Dallas in 1976, but missed the season with a knee injury. The same thing happened in 1977. He was released in 1978 and claimed by the Green Bay Packers, but his knee never fully healed, and he never played another game. So, in an easy pick, Percy Howard is the single unlikeliest touchdown scorer in Super Bowl history. One last point here on Percy Howard. He is one of only 2 other players in NFL history whose first name is Percy and last name begins with the letter H. The other one is Percy Harvin, and he too has scored a Super Bowl touchdown. Now, how about those who have thrown touchdowns? Who's the unlikeliest here? Of the 66 who have done so, a cool 49 have at least 100 career touchdown passes. Current 49er Brock Purdy is 16 touchdowns away, and one imagines he'll hit the mark this upcoming season. Former 49er Jimmy Garoppolo is only 4 away. He may never play again, but anything is possible. We did see Phillip Rivers play this season after all. One might assume that Drake May would have the fewest career touchdown passes among quarterbacks since he's only played 2 seasons, but his 46 are better than both Frank Reich at 40 and Bob Lee at 30, a couple of guys who were predominantly backups. May is one of 2 people in that sub-100 category with multiple Super Bowl touchdown passes, the other being Nick Foles, he of 82 career touchdown passes. His 3 in Super Bowl 52, alongside that touchdown reception, helped earn him Super Bowl MVP. Now for the 6 who were not quarterbacks. First, there is Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver Antwaan Randle El. He threw the Steelers' only touchdown pass in Super Bowl 40 to fellow wide receiver Hines Ward. But Randle El was a quarterback in college at Indiana University and was more than capable, as witnessed by the 6 touchdown passes he had in his regular season career. The first non-quarterback to toss the Super Bowl touchdown pass was Dallas Cowboys running back Robert Newhouse in Super Bowl XII, finding Golden Richards for the game's final touchdown. He did have one more touchdown pass in his career. 2 seasons later, LA Rams running back Lawrence McCutcheon found Ron Smith for a touchdown, an exceedingly rare combination, giving Smith's 4 career touchdowns, and given that McCutcheon never threw another touchdown pass in his career. Not for a lack of effort though. He put up 4 regular season passes and 1 more in the playoffs. Then we have Jawan Jennings, the only non-QB to throw and score a touchdown in the same Super Bowl. A high school quarterback, Jennings found running back Christian McCaffrey for a touchdown in Super Bowl 58. He never threw a regular season touchdown pass, but he did have another one in a playoff game this past season against the Philadelphia Eagles, again to Christian McCaffrey, and he drew a flag for roughing the passer, just for good measure. The Philly special? Well, the trigger man on that play is the only tight end in Super Bowl history with a touchdown pass, Trey Burton. He was a high school quarterback and was recruited as such to the University of Florida, where he transitioned away from the position. This was the one and only pass Burton ever threw in his entire NFL career. Then we have the unlikeliest of all, Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon. In Super Bowl 56, he found T. Higgins for a touchdown on his first ever career pass attempt. He attempted one more pass for the Houston Texans in 2024 that, to his credit, at least was not intercepted. Never a quarterback at any point from high school onward, Joe Mixon is the Percy Howard of ball tossers. Has there ever been a Super Bowl where two different players with the same first name scored a touchdown? There has indeed. In fact, it's happened 4 different times with 4 different names. One of those is perhaps the most common name there ever was, John. The Denver Broncos' only touchdown in Super Bowl 24 was scored by quarterback John Elway on a 3-yard run. His touchdown the season before was much more famous, but 49ers wide receiver John Taylor also landed a 35-yarder from Joe Montana in this one. Maybe a less common name than John, Ricky is still pretty prevalent, and that name doubled up in Super Bowl 22. Ricky Nattiel led off the game with a 56-yard touchdown from John Elway for the Broncos. Then the game's next touchdown came from Ricky Sanders of the Washington Redskins from 80 yards away off the hand of Doug Williams. Sanders added another in that game from 50. Our next game isn't the most common, but it does belong to him. That would be Jerry. Jerry Rice scored a 48-yard touchdown in Super Bowl 37 from Rich Gannon for the Oakland Raiders, but not before rookie teammate Jerry Porter got himself a 39-yarder. This marks the one and only time that 2 teammates with the same first name scored a touchdown in the same Super Bowl. Now we have a pretty uncommon first name. John has so many other Super Bowl touchdown scorers, and Ricky has its share as well. Even Jerry gives us one more, with Jerry Hill scoring a 1-yard touchdown for the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. But this name only has 2 representatives, and not only do they score in the same game, they match the Ricky standard by scoring the first 2 touchdowns of its game. This is Super Bowl 44 between the Indianapolis Colts and the New Orleans Saints. Pierre Garçon led the game off with a 19-yard touchdown catch from Peyton Manning for the Colts. Then Pierre Thomas followed with a 16-yard touchdown catch from Drew Brees for the Saints. It should surprise absolutely nobody that the most common Super Bowl touchdown length is 1 yard, and there's been 53 of those in Super Bowl history. The first of these was scored by Elijah Pitts to close out Super Bowl I for the Green Bay Packers, and the most recent by Jalen Hurts to open up Super Bowl 59 for the Philadelphia Eagles. So just over 16% of all Super Bowl touchdowns, around 1 in 6, are of the 1-yard variety. What might be a bit surprising is that the next most common touchdown length, naturally from 2 yards out, isn't even halfway to its 1-yard counterpart, sitting at 26. Then for some reason 4-yarders and 5-yarders are more common before we land at the 3-yarders. When counting the 3 0-yard touchdowns altogether, touchdowns of 5 yards or fewer account for just over 40% of all Super Bowl touchdowns. Well, that does leave us with just under 60% that are from further out. But none of those were from 32 yards away. At no point has a team been at their opponent's 32-yard line and scored a touchdown. For the record, no team has scored a touchdown from their own 32-yard line either. This is the shortest distance from the end zone that has 0 representation among Super Bowl touchdowns. If you're curious, 6 field goals have been made from that distance. Only 1 touchdown has been scored from exactly 20 yards out, a magnificent play by Jerry Rice to open Super Bowl 24 against the Denver Broncos, the second of his 8 career Super Bowl touchdowns. However, 3 touchdowns have been scored from 80 yards out. That is, when a team has the ball at its own 20-yard line as opposed to its opponent's. This is aided by touchbacks being placed at the 20, but still. Kenny King was the first, catching an 80-yarder from Jim Plunkett in Super Bowl 15. Then there was Ricky Sanders, kicking off that magical second quarter for the Washington Redskins in Super Bowl 22, catching a beautiful deep pass from Doug Williams. Then there's Rod Smith of the Denver Broncos cooking Eugene Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. If you know the Eugene Robinson story, you know. This was an 80-yarder from John Elway in Super Bowl 33. Fun fact, personal fun fact, the commercial break preceding that touchdown was shockingly short. Having gone to the restroom, I completely missed the touchdown live. Everyone I was watching the game with were hooping and hollering, and I assumed that they were just being a-holes trying to rush me out. And they were not. For scrimmage plays, touchdowns have to be between 1 and 99 yards. The longest touchdown from scrimmage in Super Bowl history took place in Super Bowl 38 when Carolina Panthers quarterback Jake Delhomme found Muhsin Muhammad for an 85-yard score. Impressive, but kind of far from the maximum 99. Muhammad, not exactly known as a burner, would then score a touchdown in Super Bowl 41 as part of the Chicago Bears. That puts him in quite an exclusive club. We've got Jerry Rice, 7 for the 49ers and 1 for the Raiders, along with Rob Gronkowski, 3 with the Patriots, 2 with the Buccaneers, making Gronk the only player in the history of the world to score multiple Super Bowl touchdowns for multiple teams. The only other member of this club was Muhsin Muhammad's teammate on that 2013 Carolina Panthers team, and when he scored a very late touchdown in that game to tie things up at 29, he became the first player to ever score a touchdown for 2 different teams in the Super Bowl. We are, of course, talking about Ricky Proehl, who also scored a late, game-tying touchdown against the Patriots for the St. Louis Rams just 2 seasons earlier. Ricky Proehl is the Sid Justice of the NFL, a man whose only 2 WrestleMania matches were losses in the main event, for in each instance, Ricky Proehl's team was on the losing side of things. So while 85 yards may be the longest touchdown from scrimmage, there have been 10 other touchdowns that have been longer, and it should come as no surprise that almost all of these came from kickoff returns, ranging from Percy Harvin's 86-yard touchdown to open the second half of Super Bowl 48 for the Seattle Seahawks, all the way up to Jacoby Jones's monstrous 108-yard touchdown that also opened up the second half just 1 season earlier in Super Bowl 47 for the Baltimore Ravens. Yet better had made it back in front of the TV in time for these games. Now, Jones naturally holds the record for the longest touchdown scored in Super Bowl history, and that record can only ever be broken by a single yard until such time that the NFL makes its end zones bigger. But, given the modern kickoff rules, this record can never be broken. At least, not by a kickoff. We did mention that almost all Super Bowl touchdowns of over 85 yards were on kickoff returns. There is one that was not. It's late in the first half of Super Bowl 43. The Arizona Cardinals, here in this game seemingly by the grace of God and the uniquely spectacular play of wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, are very much in this game. After falling behind 10-0 to the favored Pittsburgh Steelers, Kurt Warner found Ben Patrick in the end zone for a touchdown. Patrick, a 7th-round tight end out of Delaware, had 2 prior touchdown receptions in his career. None in this 2008 season, and would only ever catch 2 more. With the football resting just inside the 2-yard line, officially at the 1, Arizona has every chance in the world to grab the lead and to take that lead into halftime. 18 seconds are on the clock. It is first down, but Arizona has no timeouts, so a run play seems unlikely. Indeed, zone is lined up in the shotgun. Steelers linebacker James Harrison isn't a traditional off-ball linebacker. In fact, in today's game, he would be referred to as an edge, all capital letters. Pittsburgh shows blitz on the play and they do bring it, but Harrison sees something else and decides to hold back. Anquan Boldin is the intended receiver, and if Harrison does what he is supposed to do on this play, this is an easy touchdown. That's what Kurt Warner is thinking as well, and he makes the anticipation throw to Boldin. In his way is big number 92. Harrison has already done extremely well to this point, but then he does one better, and instead of simply knocking the pass away, he intercepts it. right at the goal line. There are people on this field wearing Steeler uniforms that are faster than Harrison, including cornerback Lachey Townsend, who was less than 1 yard away from him as he makes the interception. But this is Harrison's ball. In fact, Townsend appears to be in his way more than anything else, perhaps thinking Harrison will give him the ball instead. Once Townsend gets the message, he turns into a blocker, and a rather effective one as well. 10 seconds remain on the clock when, at his own 40, it looks like the Cardinals have converged enough to make sure Harrison goes no further. But he slips a tackle attempt by Leonard Pope and seems to gain some acceleration. Former edge Lamar Woodley, having made it all the way downfield, makes a tremendous block to clear rookie running back Tim Hightower. Harrison cuts inside where valiant Cardinal offensive linemen are sprinting as fast as their 300-plus pound bodies will allow them. Time continues ticking away as a figure, who has only recently come on screen, appears ready to make the tackle. That would be Larry Fitzgerald, he of the epic playoff run. He has found himself running along the sideline, literally on the wide of the sideline, where he bumps into Antrell Roll. The problem is that Roll is a defensive player for the Cardinals and Larry's teammate. This does enough to slow him down. At the 15-yard line, somehow, someway, 316-pound, 30-year-old offensive tackle Wayne Gandy has heroically made it toward Harrison and has taken as good a tackling angle as you could hope for. Fitzgerald now has recovered from his collision and is also within striking range. 5 seconds remain as Harrison starts to lose steam. There remains a very real possibility that if he cannot get this ball into the end zone, that time will run out on the half and this entire effort will be for naught. He can go down and give his offense one shot at the end zone. He can dip out of bounds and make sure his offense gets a field goal attempt. But this is James Harrison. Gandy dives at his feet and makes contact at the 7-yard line. Harrison leans left and loses all his forward momentum, but he remains on his feet. 3 seconds remain. Gandy's amazing effort has given Larry Fitzgerald his chance to make a bigger play than any of the 7 touchdowns he scored during this postseason. He gets to him at the 4-yard line, right around the time when Steve Preston, the Cardinals slot receiver, enters the picture to make heavy contact with Harrison. Harrison now has no choice. As the clock is set to expire, he is going down. Will he make it into the end zone and give his team a 14-point swing? Or will he have simply made a nice play at the goal line with the resultant sound and fury signifying nothing? With triple zeros on the clock, and with Harrison laid out, spread eagle on the ground with ball held aloft, line judge Mark Perlman signals touchdown. Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, the best halftime show ever booked by the people who do booking for the halftime show, is gonna have to wait because this play is under review. As Harrison eventually rose up, made his way to the sideline, receiving a heaping of oxygen, just over 4 minutes pass before referee Terry McCauley says the magic words. After review, the ruling on the field stands. Touchdown. It cannot be overstated how monumental this play was. It changed the entire complexion of the game and ultimately led to the Steelers becoming the first NFL franchise with 6 Lombardis in their trophy cabinet. And for James Harrison, the man who should have been Super Bowl 43's MVP, he had himself the record for the longest touchdown scored in Super Bowl history. He currently sits in second place behind Jacoby Jones, but he still holds the record for the longest pick six and the longest defensive touchdown of all time. He broke Willie Brown's record, with Brown making that iconic pick six in Super Bowl 11 for the Oakland Raiders. That went for 75 yards. Robert Robert Alford is the only one who has sniffed it since, taking it back 82 yards for the Atlanta Falcons in Super Bowl 51. It is James Harrison, though, who stands alone, and it is this play that is the single greatest play in all of NFL history. Let's now switch back to the offense. Woody Hayes was a great component of the 3 yards and a cloud of dust offensive approach, and it was a mainstay in the early days of the Super Bowl era. And even though the run game was certainly prevalent, it didn't lend itself to a lot of big plays. Then, as more big play running backs started entering the league capable of making such big plays, the passing game started to take off. Therefore, if you can believe it, only 3 touchdown runs in all of Super Bowl history have been from over 50 yards away. We've already touched on 2 of them, Timmy Smith going for 58 yards in Super Bowl 22, and Marcus Allen dazzling anybody with eyes with his 74-yard touchdown for the LA Raiders in Super Bowl 18. That remained the record for 22 years, until it was broken by someone who certainly had the right nickname to do so. Following a perfect block from guard Alan Faneca, fast Willie Parker dashed his way into the record books for the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 40, just knocking Marcus Allen off his pedestal with a 75-yard touchdown run. It's the next longest run on the list that might be just as iconic as Marcus Allen's though, and it took place just the season before. Facing a 4th and 1 and trailing by 4 points in the 4th quarter, the Washington Redskins were lucky enough to have a dude in the backfield who went by the name Diesel. Running behind the famed Hogs and shrugging off a tackle attempt from Miami Dolphins corner Don McNeil, it was John Riggins racing his way in for the touchdown. This was not the record for the longest run for the first 18 Super Bowls, but it was the record for the longest touchdown run. Of course, the vast majority of touchdown runs come from the 10-yard line and in, by a count of 91-16. Only 16 touchdown runs of more than 10 yards have ever occurred in Super Bowl history, and no one has more than 1. If we allow our parameters to extend to just double-digit touchdown runs, then we have one single player who has a touchdown run of exactly 10 yards, which he is able to pair with another one of 15 yards. This man isn't known for breakaway speed or particularly long runs, but he is certainly known for getting into the end zone. The only player in Super Bowl history with 2 separate double-digit touchdown runs is Emmitt Smith. Taking it to scores within the 5-yard line, it is once again more likely to see a touchdown run from the 4 than it is from the 3. Why is it seemingly harder to score from the 3? Should teams be taking a knee and going from the 4? Those 16 scores plus 6 from the 5-yard line and 19 from the 2-yard line gives us a grand total of 41 before considering scores from the 1-yard line. Maybe it's surprising to you, maybe it's not, but the number of 1-yard touchdown runs in Super Bowl history is more than the combined total of touchdowns from the 2 through the 5-yard line, but it is close at 43-41. 6 players have done this multiple times. Emmitt Smith, Franco Harris, and Jalen Hurts should come as no surprise. Then we have Jim Kick of the Miami Dolphins, when you might imagine that Larry Zonka's brute force would make him the goal line back. Then we have a pretty unlikely name in Denver Broncos fullback Howard Griffith. Then, of course, the king of this category is Denver Broncos tailback Terrell Davis, whose 3 1-yard touchdown runs all occurred in the same game, Super Bowl 32. He was likely to receive the ones Griffith got the following season, but with that game being the last one of John Elway's career, Davis's numbers had to be suppressed so that Elway could win the MVP. Franco Harris is the only other player to have 2 in the same game for the Steelers in Super Bowl 14. Players have completely owned the spotlight up to this point. Let's go ahead and shine the light on some of these NFL teams. They've played in 12 Super Bowls, more than anyone else, so it's not surprising that no franchise has scored more touchdowns in Super Bowl history than the New England Patriots. But they only just retook that record with the 2 they scored in Super Bowl 60. Those were touchdowns number 31 and 32 by Mac Hollins and Rhamondre Stevenson. They passed the San Francisco 49ers, who in 8 games have scored 31. They haven't made an NFC championship in over 30 years, let alone a Super Bowl, but the Dallas Cowboys take third with 26, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are the only other team to clear 20 with 24. 13 different teams, fewer than half the league, have scored at least 10 touchdowns, but there are 4 different franchises with multiple championships who remain in the single digits. The Rams are at 9, while the Colts, Dolphins, and Ravens sit at 8. The Ravens can say they've only played 2 games at least, while the Rams and Dolphins have played in 5, and the Colts have partaken in 4. The only franchise with exactly 1 Super Bowl touchdown also happens to have 1 Super Bowl title without ever taking a loss. Yes, we're talking about the New York Jets, champions of Super Bowl III, on the backs of a single touchdown scored by Matt Snell from 4 yards out. Then, of course, none among the Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars, or the Houston Texans own a Super Bowl touchdown. Primarily due to the fact that these franchises have yet to make their inaugural appearance in that game. This was the only way these franchises could get mentioned here. Though they barely own the overall lead, the Patriots firmly lead the way here through unique touchdown scorers. That is to say, 24 different people have scored a touchdown in a Patriot uniform, beginning all the way back in Super Bowl XX with Irving Fryer, whose touchdown against the Chicago Bears cut the deficit of that game all the way down from 44-3 to 44-10. And of course, our to-date most recent Super Bowl touchdown scorer period, Rhamondre Stevenson. In between, we have the only other defensive player in Super Bowl history, alongside the now legendary Dwight Smith, to score multiple touchdowns in his Super Bowl career. Of course, he did his damage lined up on offense as a pseudo tight end, and he does have 11 career regular season touchdowns. Former Patriots linebacker and current Patriots head coach, heir to the Patriot way, one Mr. Mike Vrabel. With Jerry Rice doing so much damage on his own, the 49ers actually slipped to 3rd on this list with 17 individual touchdown scorers to the Dallas Cowboys' 18. And now the Tennessee Titans join the New York Jets since their 2 Super Bowl touchdowns were scored by the same guy, Eddie George. Okay, now back to the players. Hey look, we've got Jerry Rice leading the way in another category. That would be total touchdown yardage, a number we referenced earlier in the video at 214 yards. His closest competitors for actual touchdowns may be Emmitt Smith and Rob Gronkowski, but they are nowhere near the top of the charts for total yardage. In fact, only 7 players have 100 yards worth of total Super Bowl touchdowns to their names. And of course, it won't shock you that 2 of those guys are James Harrison and Jacoby Jones, seeing as though they've scored singular touchdowns from 100 yards out or more. Harrison remains at 100 exactly, while Jones paired his kick return touchdown with a long touchdown reception, giving him 3rd place on the list with 164 yards. Ricky Sanders has 2 touchdowns for 130 total yards, but this man did this in a single quarter of football. Good luck to anyone else trying to break that record. He slides into 4th place. Making it onto 6th place is Antonio Freeman, once the owner of the longest offensive touchdown in Super Bowl history, and still in 2nd place. Those 2 touchdowns he scored in a losing cause the following season get him to 116 yards. Our 2 remaining spots belong to a pair of teammates who were on a running team that did love to take its shots downfield, John Stallworth and Lynn Swann. But which of these 2 will take 2nd place, and which one will take 5th? Many may believe Swann to rank higher, remembering that spectacular catch he made against the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl X. But the Mandela effect may cause some people to remember that as a touchdown grab, which it wasn't. He did score later in that game, and it was a 64-yarder. But Swann's 3 Super Bowl touchdown grabs bring him to 129 total yards. It's John Stallworth in 2nd with his 3 Super Bowl touchdown grabs, netting an incredible 176 yards. In Super Bowl XIII against the Dallas Cowboys, he took in a short little 28 yards 60-yarder before coming back with a 75-yarder, giving him 100 yards worth and more in a single game. Then he dropped another hammer on the Rams the following season, going for 173 yards and permanently placing his team in the lead. His average touchdown was from 52 yards away, meaning he was more likely to score from his own side of the field than he was his opponent's. And his shortest Super Bowl touchdown would qualify as the longest Super Bowl touchdown pass among the 21 thrown by Tom Brady. Speaking of touchdown lengths, we already mentioned that the average Super Bowl touchdown comes in at just over 20 yards on average, 20.316 to be exact. But those numbers have to be skewed by defensive touchdowns and special team touchdowns being of a longer variety, right? Indeed, these touchdowns tend to be longer on average, starting at the top with kick returns. Although we have a couple coming in at under 90 yards, the 10 kick return touchdowns have accounted for 950 yards, an average of exactly 95 each. The 17 pick sixes have covered almost as many total yards at 903, still carrying a solid average of 53.118. The 7 fumble recoveries for touchdowns in Super Bowl history come in at 181 total yards, 25.857 per, but bringing the average down are blocked punt returns, only 3 mind you, but for a total of 13 yards, an average of 4 1/3 of a yard. Those 37 non-offensive touchdowns then combined for 2,047 yards, an average of 55.324. Even when removing kick returns, the average is 40.63, just more than double the average for all touchdowns. But these are small numbers in the grand scheme. Non-offensive touchdowns account for just over 11% of all touchdowns, leaving those offensive touchdowns at nearly 89% to do the heavy lifting. It should come as no surprise that passing touchdowns are on average longer than rushing touchdowns. It shouldn't require much explanation, but consider that there have been 14 pass plays covering the maximum 99 yards in NFL history, while there have only been 2 such rushing plays, although one of those rushes by Derrick Henry is the most recent 99-yard play from scrimmage. 185 Super Bowl touchdown passes have covered 3,894 yards, so even the average touchdown pass in Super Bowl history comes from outside the red zone, with the average coming in at 21.049 yards. It's running plays that bring it down. Those 107 touchdowns have combined for 743 yards, not quite 7 yards per touchdown, which is ironic because throughout the entire history of the Super Bowl, there has not been a single touchdown run for exactly 7 yards. The 1-yarders truly tell the story here. Of the 53, 43 have come on the ground, just 10 through the air. The highest scoring Super Bowl of all time was Super Bowl 29 between the San Francisco 49ers and the San Diego Chargers, and that game also provides us with the most touchdowns in any single game with 10. Naturally, the 49ers did the most damage here, getting across the line 7 different times. We know that Jerry Rice and Ricky Watters had 3 each, but do you know who scored the other one? That would be rookie fullback William Floyd. Nicknamed Bar None because he was the best fullback in the 1994 draft, bar none, he was the last fullback to ever be drafted in the first round. That's been 32 years, and it'll probably be a lot longer before that ever happens again, at least the way the game is being played now. The Chargers got themselves 3 touchdowns as well, with 2 of them essentially in garbage time. Andre Coleman had a 98-yard kickoff after the 49ers took a 42-10 lead, then Tony Martin caught a 30-yarder from Stan Humphries, with the 49ers leading 49-18. That touchdown actually closed out the scoring for the day. The first touchdown scored by the Chargers, when the game was still somewhat in the balance at 14-0, was scored by Natron Means, the Chargers running back who was basically a bowling ball in cleats. Now please correct me if I'm wrong on this point, but Means, I believe, is the first player to ever reject a nickname given to him by Chris Berman. Berman had some amazing ones over the years, including Bert B. Home Bly Levin, John I Am Not a Crook, Mike, you're in good hands with Allstott. Ben, Winter Coats, that one being so good that I started calling him that. And my personal favorite, Eric, sleeping with Bienemy, which was just perfect. His nickname for natron means was natron refried beans, a take on refried beans of course. Now as I remember it, Means didn't think the name reflected well enough on him, so it was changed to natron means business, punctuated by Berman's emphatic pronunciation. Like I said, I do believe this was a first, that's how I remember it, but if I missed out on someone else, I would certainly love to hear about it. That was the only game that gave us 10 touchdowns, but there have been 6 other games that just missed by giving us 9. The most common output has been 4, with 14 such games hitting that mark. And although we've never had a Super Bowl with 0 touchdowns scored, plenty have threatened it. And in the end, every single game wound up hitting for multiple touchdowns, except for one. That would be Super Bowl 53 between the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams. The lone touchdown scorer in that game was Patriots running back Sony Michel, hitting pay dirt from 2 yards out after 53 minutes of game clock had elapsed. Thanks to Doug Williams and the aerial show put on by the Washington Redskins in Super Bowl 22, that particular Super Bowl gives us the most combined yardage for all touchdowns scored. The 7 put up in that game come out to a total of 283 yards, more than 40 yards each on average. But the Denver Broncos' lone touchdown in this game contributed as well. On their very first play from scrimmage, John Elway hit Ricky Nattiel for a 56-yarder, which at the time was the fastest touchdown scored in Super Bowl history. That record now belongs to Devin Hester. For all the kickoff returns we've discussed to this point, it is Hester and Hester alone who returned the game's opening kickoff for a touchdown in Super Bowl 41 for the Chicago Bears. Super Bowl 35 between the New York Giants and Baltimore Ravens actually gives us our second most total yardage at 271. Now that may seem odd for a one-sided defensive slugfest, but if this game is remembered for anything, it was the flurry of touchdowns that took place on 3 consecutive plays, all of which were not scored by the offense. First, there was Dwayne Starks intercepting a Kerry Collins pass and running it back for a 49-yard touchdown. That was simply the appetizer. On the subsequent kickoff, Ron Dixon of the New York Giants returned it 97 yards for his touchdown. Then, in an attempt to be cute, the Giants went for a shorter kick to Jermaine Lewis. It didn't work, and Lewis took it back 84 yards for a third touchdown scored across just 36 seconds of game clock. This is the only time in Super Bowl history where 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns happened in the same game. It's also the only time it's ever happened, not just in Super Bowl history, but in all of playoff history. And they happened on back-to-back kickoffs. In total, 10 different Super Bowls have surpassed 200 yards worth of total touchdown yardage, but it's the very bottom of the list that might be the most interesting. 10 different games failed to clear 25 total yards. Super Bowl 42, a game much more famous for other reasons, like this, and this, gave us 3 touchdowns for 12 total yards when Plaxico Burress' 13-yard game winner more than doubled that total to 25. Super Bowl 46, also between the Patriots and Giants, missed out on that mark by a single yard, with the final 6-yarder by Ahmad Bradshaw somewhat unintentionally scored. Also with 24 total yards is Super Bowl 16 between the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals, a game capped off by Dan Ross's 2 touchdown catches. That gave the Bengals 3 on the day following Ken Anderson's 5-yard run early in the second half. This was the first time, and it remains the only time, that the losing team in a Super Bowl scored more touchdowns than the winning team, with the 49ers only getting in the end zone twice, but also kicking 4 field goals. We've had plenty of instances where the losing team and the winning team scored the same number of touchdowns though, including just this past season in Super Bowl 60. Now we have the Magnificent Seven, or I suppose in this case the Unmagnificent Seven. These are the 7 Super Bowls whose total touchdown yardage sits below the average touchdown length. Super Bowl 6, Cowboys vs. Dolphins, 17 yards. Super Bowl 30, Cowboys vs. Steelers, 15 yards. Super Bowl 9, Steelers vs. Vikings, 13 yards. Super Bowl 8, Dolphins vs. Vikings, 12 yards. Then we have the 3 single-digit disaster pieces. Super Bowl 3, Jets vs. Colts, 5 yards. Super Bowl 50, Broncos vs. Panthers, 3 yards. And of course, the only Super Bowl ever with just a single touchdown, Super Bowl 53, 2 entire yards. You might imagine that more touchdowns are scored in the second and fourth quarters as opposed to the first and third quarters. Likewise, that there would be more touchdowns scored in the second half than have been scored in the first half, simply based on how the flow of football games usually go. Well, you would be right. The first quarter has provided 53 touchdowns against 91 in the second quarter. Then those numbers rise to 77 in the third and a cool 106 in the fourth. And as it turns out, the fourth quarter has exactly twice as many touchdowns as the first. That gives us 144 in the first half and 185 in the second half. That second half total includes 2 overtime touchdowns. 4 different players have scored a touchdown in each of the first 4 quarters. Your usual suspects here: John Elway, Thurman Thomas, Rob Gronkowski, and Jerry Rice, who just missed scoring multiple touchdowns in every single quarter, only scoring once in the second. Then there's James White. He never did score a first quarter touchdown, but he's landed them in the second, third, fourth, and in overtime. Let's now take a look at some landmark touchdowns, and of course we go all the way back to touchdown number 1, first quarter of Super Bowl 1, 37 yards from Bart Starr to Max McGee. Touchdown number 10 came around the next season in Super Bowl 2, again scored by the Green Bay Packers, but this one by the defense. The first offensive or non-offensive touchdown of any kind, with Herb Adderley's fourth quarter 60-yard interception return. Touchdown number 25? No, we still can't talk about this one yet. Number 50 we've already talked about, the 75-yard bomb from Terry Bradshaw to John Stallworth in Super Bowl 10. The 100th touchdown in Super Bowl history is pretty much forgotten. A 47-yard pass from John Elway to Vance Johnson in Super Bowl 21. That took place right before the 2-minute warning in the second half, cutting the Broncos' deficit from 39-13 to 39-20, and was the final score of the game. Touchdown 200 was also the last touchdown of its game, having no impact on the ultimate results, and looky here, it's Dwight Smith again. Pick 6 number 2, 50 yards, Super Bowl 37, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2 seconds on the clock, making it 48-21. Not counting overtime, this is the latest touchdown scored in any Super Bowl game. I hereby declare Dwight Smith the inaugural inductee into the History of Super Bowl Touchdowns Hall of Fame. Now touchdown number 300, also the last touchdown of a game, and also meaningless to the overall result, and also scored by the Buccaneers. This one was Leonard Fournette in Super Bowl 55 on a 27-yard run. It wasn't the final actual score of the game, but it was its final touchdown, making it a 28-9 game. Then we come full circle. Rhamondre Stevenson's 7-yard catch for the New England Patriots to end Super Bowl 60. Touchdown number 329 and counting. Even though this is a history of Super Bowl touchdowns, we do need to take a look at some of the touchdowns that never were. In Super Bowl 13, eventual Hall of Fame tight end Jackie Smith, playing for the Dallas Cowboys, dropped a pass from Roger Staubach. Smith was alone in the middle of the end zone and by any account should have made the catch. Dallas settled for a field goal, a 4-point negative swing in a game they lost by 4 points. In Super Bowl 16, the Cincinnati Bengals had 4 shots at the end zone, but were held up by a goal line stand by the San Francisco 49ers. On 3rd down from the 1, Ken Anderson completed a pass to Charles Alexander, where he was taken down by 49er linebacker Dan Buns before getting into the end zone. Then on 4th down, the Bengals tried bruising running back Pete Johnson up the middle, where he was met by Buns, fellow linebacker Hacksaw Reynolds, and corner Ronnie Lott. The Bengals lost out on 7 points in a game they lost by 5. This next one didn't cost his team the game, but it was significant nonetheless and deserves a little bit of storytelling. With the Dallas Cowboys already crushing the Buffalo Bills 52-17 in Super Bowl 27, Cowboys defensive end Jim Jeffcoat hammered Bills quarterback Frank Reich, jarring the ball loose. The Big Cat, defensive lineman Leon Lett, scooped up the fumble and ran it back 64 yards the other way. If he wanted a touchdown, he needed to go 65 yards. In an attempt to mimic Michael Irvin, Lett started strutting with the ball held out to his side. Don Beebe, despite being down 35 points, never gave up on the play. Having raced down the field, Lett gave him an opportunity when he exposed the ball the way he did. Beebe took advantage of this and stripped Lett right before he crossed the goal line. Fumble, ball out of bounds in the end zone, touchback for Buffalo. Lett not scoring there cost Dallas a couple of milestones. It would have been their 3rd defensive touchdown of the game, which would have set a Super Bowl record. The Buccaneers pulled off that specific feat 10 seasons later. It also cost the Cowboys 7 more points, assuming a good extra point of course. But either way, they would have set a new Super Bowl record for points scored, clearing the 55 points put up by the 49ers just 3 seasons earlier when the Cowboys went 1-15. This record would still be standing. It also served as a bit of a national teachable moment. Don Beebe demonstrating a never say die attitude even when all was lost. Leon Lett demonstrating that a race is never won before it is completed. A further lesson was learned that redemption is always possible when Lett turned himself around from this gaffe and another gaffe the following season on Thanksgiving against the Dolphins, when he forced a fumble the following Super Bowl that James Washington ran back for a touchdown. Lett himself also had quite a nice career. The most underrated part of all this was the exchange between NBC's commentators for the game. Before the fumble was officially confirmed, the utter legend Dick Enberg said if they call that a no touchdown, he's gonna dig a hole and crawl out of this place from there. Bob Trumpy's response, he's gonna need a big hole. A list like this is of course incomplete without talking about Super Bowl 34's final play. Perhaps the only play in Super Bowl history with 2 distinct nicknames, depending on your perspective. The Tennessee Titans trailed the St. Louis Rams by 7 points with 6 seconds remaining. From the 10-yard line and with no timeouts, Titans quarterback Steve McNair found wide receiver Kevin Dyson for a completion. These two had just combined for a ridiculous completion the play before, when McNair looked like he was going to be tackled about 427 different times. Dyson, of course, scored the Music City Miracle touchdown in the wild card round. If any combination was going to make this magic, this was it. But Rams linebacker Mike Jones, in coverage against tight end Frank Wycheck, saw what was happening. He peeled off of Wycheck and performed a perfect form tackle on Dyson. As they rolled to the turf, Dyson stretched out his arm to no avail. In St. Louis, this play is the tackle. In Tennessee, it's 1 yard short. This, of course, could have tied the game. Perhaps Tennessee goes for the 2 and the win. Alas, we will never know. we've got to quickly mention Anquan Boldin's touchdown that never was for the Arizona Cardinals in Super Bowl 43. That touchdown instead went the other way in the arms of James Harrison. The Patriots let the Giants score near the end of Super Bowl 46, and New York took the bait. That allowed them one final Hail Mary heave into the end zone. Had Rob Gronkowski positioned himself just a little bit better, he could have caught it. The ball fell harmlessly to the turf, and the 9-7, outscored on the season New York Giants were Super Bowl champions. And of course, there is Super Bowl 49. Little known fact, or perhaps a little remembered fact, the intended receiver on that bonehead play by the Seattle Seahawks was Ricardo Lockett. Lockett didn't get his Super Bowl touchdown. Malcolm Butler got his Super Bowl interception. It's been said before, and it always bears repeating. This was the single dumbest decision and worst play execution in NFL history. The anti-James Harrison, if you will. There are many candidates for what the most famous or the most iconic touchdown in Super Bowl history might be. Many may just tend toward history and take number 1 by Max McGee. There are a couple with an incredibly unique history. Percy Howard's only career reception of any kind in Super Bowl X, the Philly special in Super Bowl 52, tight end Trey Burton throwing it to quarterback Nick Foles. 3 different touchdowns stand out as freezing a moment in time. Willie Brown's pick 6 in Super Bowl 11, made completely iconic by NFL films. William Perry, the refrigerator, a defensive tackle, lining up in the offensive backfield with the camera focusing in on him, plunging in for a touchdown that was extremely exciting in the moment, but has become associated with who didn't score as opposed to who did. A moment head coach Mike Ditka has referred to as his biggest regret in coaching. Then there's the opening touchdown of Super Bowl 31, shortly after the game began, with Green Bay Packers quarterback Brett Favre finding mid-season acquisition Andre Rison for a 54-yard touchdown. In this case, it's not exactly the touchdown that became iconic, but Favre's reaction to it. Racing off the field, his helmet held high aloft, a look of unadulterated joy across his face. That helmet removal would be a penalty today, of course, but not so for the 1996 season. There are some game winners that live long in the memory. I don't think any 49er fan can watch Joe Montana to John Taylor in the final minute of Super Bowl 23 without getting at least a little choked up. Kurt Warner releasing the ball in the last possible moment for a 73-yard touchdown pass to Isaac Bruce in Super Bowl 34, giving the St. Louis Rams the lead that they held onto after the tackle. Somewhat obscured by the helmet catch that took place a few plays earlier, Eli Manning to Plaxico Burress in Super Bowl 42 was the dagger into the undefeated season of the New England Patriots. And Santonio Holmes dropping the Tampa toe tap in the end zone on a 6-yard pass from Ben Roethlisberger the very next season in Super Bowl 43 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's not it though. We've got 2 overtime walk-off winners. James White on a pitch right from 2 yards out to crown the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 51. Mecole Hardman slipping away from the defense, catching a 3-yard touchdown from Patrick Mahomes, crowning the Kansas City Chiefs as repeat champions in Super Bowl 58. Then there's those one-of-a-kind plays. John Riggins in Super Bowl 17, Marcus Allen's Magic Act in Super Bowl 18, and of course James Harrison, the best, just the best, in Super Bowl 43. But there is one more, a touchdown we've been dancing around for pretty much the entire video. This is the longest fumble return for a touchdown in Super Bowl history at 49 yards. This is the only fumble return for a touchdown that took place on special teams, and this is truly a fumble return, not an interception return, not a blocked kick return. This was the 25th touchdown ever scored in Super Bowl history. It almost ruined an undefeated season, but it did ruin what could have landed as a 17-0 final score, which would have perfectly matched that undefeated record. I believe we know where this is going. Let us meet Garo Yepremian. Garo was born in Cyprus, which at the time was a British colony, to Armenian parents. Not exactly the standard gateway into a career in the NFL. Young Garo played football before playing football. That is, he played soccer. Now living in the United States at the age of 22, not having played college football because he wasn't eligible for it, he signed on to become a kicker for the Detroit Lions. He played 2 seasons and was moderately successful, including a 6 field goal game, at the time an NFL record. Then, despite not even being a United States citizen, he enlisted in the United States Army while the war in Vietnam was still running strong. He therefore did not play in the NFL for the 1968 and 1969 seasons, and when he returned, he joined the Miami Dolphins. Miami had just hired Don Shula as head coach, pulling off the rare daily double of being both a young man and an experienced head coach. The Dolphins were an expansion team in the AFL and had only experienced losing, but were now set to join the NFL as part of the 2 leagues completing their merger. Garo won the place-kicking job and went on to keep it for 9 seasons, being selected as a first-team All-Pro twice and making it onto the 1970s All-Decade team. Simply a remarkable legacy for a man who, standing 5'8", weighing 175 pounds, and holding little if any knowledge of the sport he made his career in before beginning that career to have. Except for one thing. This is not his legacy. Oh no, not by a long shot. When the name Garo Yepremian is brought up in any context even remotely bordering on football, it's this. The Miami Dolphins, undefeated in 14 regular season games and 2 playoff games, brought that 16-0 record into Super Bowl VII against the Washington Redskins. One of the major reasons they haven't lost a game this season is the clutch kicking of Yepremian. He kicked 3 field goals against the Vikings, including a 51-yarder in the 4th quarter, before Miami pulled out a 16-14 win. A 1-point win against the Buffalo Bills included a 54-yard field goal, a simply massive kick for the time, which stood as the Dolphins' record for 17 years and tied for that season's 2nd longest. 2 field goals and a 6-point win in the playoffs against the Cleveland Browns, both from 40-plus yards away. Now in the Super Bowl, it's the 4th quarter, and Miami leads the game 14-0. The game feels mostly in hand, but a chance to really put it away now lay on Garo's foot. From 42 yards out, he drove that left foot through the ball, but big defensive tackle Bill Brunage for the Redskins lifted his 6'5" frame up in the air and blocked the kick. Now, unlike many other blocked field goals, the ball didn't go haywire, somewhat gently bounding back for a few yards. So gently, in fact, that Garo was able to track it down and take possession of it just 5 yards behind the spot of the kick. Why did he decide to do this? I don't know, it sure seemed like he was panicked. This wasn't the first kick he had blocked in his career, but this was the Super Bowl after all. If it wasn't panic that caused him to pick up the ball, then it most certainly was panic that explained what happened next. Now being chased by Brunage, Garo Yepremian, place kicker, for a split second thought he was Johnny Unitas. He attempted, and the absolute key word here is attempted, to throw a pass. To whom? I have no idea. But yeah, very bad idea, very bad execution. His arm did go forward, but the football remained behind his head, suspended in frozen animation. He does take notice of this and tries to collect it. Instead, he bats it straight up into the air, as if setting up a spike in a game of volleyball. The Redskins grabbed it out of the air and ran it back for that 49-yard touchdown. 17-0 all of a sudden became 14-7, adding a degree of tension to the game that was highly unexpected. Of course, Miami did hold on for the win, and while they lost their perfect 17-0 score, they did not lose their perfect 17-0 record. Forever known as Garo's Gaffe, this is definitive proof that it is indeed a very thin line between comedy and tragedy. Miami won the game, so in the end it was just a curiosity, a funny aside, something memorably dumb, but in the end harmless. Had it cost them the game, oh boy. For our purposes though, this might simply be the most famous, more accurately the most infamous touchdown in the entire history of the Super Bowl. Except that I left out an incredibly consequential detail. That would be the man who actually scored the touchdown. I told a story here that most, if not all, football fans will know to a certain degree. It is Garo Yepremian's legacy, after all. When he left us on May 15, 2010, the article in the Washington Post mentioned his blooper in the very first sentence. So too did ESPN. CBS Sports waited until the third sentence, but also included the gap in the article's deck between the title and the byline. This play belongs to Garo Yepremian, but the touchdown belongs to somebody else. Do you know who it is? Do you know the man who snatched that ball out of the air after Garo Yepremian stumbled and bumbled it and ran it back in for a touchdown? With the 314th pick in the 12th round of the 1967 draft, both a pick and a round that no longer exists, the defending Super Bowl champion Green Bay Packers selected a cornerback who started off as a running back at the University of Michigan. Given how great and deep that roster was and how late this gentleman was picked, his contract wound up being sold to the Detroit Lions. He spent the majority of that 1967 season on the Lions' taxi squad, which is now known as the practice squad. He was activated for the season's final 2 games, where he became teammates with Garo Yepremian. 1968 was spent entirely on the taxi squad before getting his release. His highlight during those 2 seasons was getting a small speaking part in the 1968 movie Paper Lion. He was signed by the Washington Redskins for the 1969 season. Washington's head coach was Vince Lombardi, the Packers head coach who drafted him in the first place 2 seasons earlier. Still a believer in his talent, Lombardi saw this Redskins roster as easier to penetrate than that Packers roster. And that's exactly what he did. He became a starter that very season, starting all 14 games. He started all 14 games the following season as well, and every season after that through the end of his career in 1975, being forced into retirement at age 30 due to a neck injury. Including the playoffs, he played in 104 games for the franchise, starting each and every one. He never did make it to a Pro Bowl, which is a shame because he had at least 3 different seasons where he could have and probably should have. He did make the second team All-Pro in 1974. He was named one of the 70 greatest Redskins, and he was inducted into the Washington Ring of Fame. Given how he started his career, how he entered the league, and how he ended it, his story is unequivocally a massive success. And he scored what might be the most famous, or infamous, or iconic touchdown in Super Bowl history. His name is Mike Bass, and if you didn't know him before, you certainly know him now. Let me know what you think about all of this. What got left out here that should have been included? What maybe deserved a greater spotlight? Perhaps a smaller spotlight, or perhaps no spotlight at all? Sound off on any of this or anything else you may have on your mind down in the comments section below. Be sure to stick around just a little while longer as we now chronologically list every touchdown ever scored in Super Bowl history. As for me, I thank you so very much for taking some time with us today. And until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.